Hello, my friends. Today we'll start with the news that Ukraine has already handed over a memorandum to the Russian side. Umerov gave Medinsky a document regarding a ceasefire. The Russian side still has at least 4 days before departure to submit their document for us to review. Meanwhile, Lavrov said that they will hand over their memorandum during the second round of negotiations.
As is known, with the support of the United States, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey, conditions were created to resume direct Russian-Ukrainian negotiations. The first round after the resumption took place on May 16 in Istanbul. In accordance with the agreements reached there, a prisoner exchange was carried out on a 1,000 for 1,000 basis. It was also agreed in Istanbul that both Moscow and Kiev would prepare documents outlining each side's position in order to achieve a sustainable resolution. The Russian side, as agreed, quickly drafted a corresponding memorandum presenting our position on all aspects of reliably overcoming the root causes of the crisis. Our delegation, led by Vladimir Medinsky, is ready to present this memorandum to the Ukrainian delegation and provide the necessary explanations during the second round of resumed direct negotiations in Istanbul. Scheduled for next Monday, June 2nd, I would once again like to thank our Turkish partners for providing a hospitable venue in Turkey. As confirmed yesterday during his visit to Moscow by Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan, we hope that all those who are genuinely rather than just rhetorically interested in the success of the peace process will support holding the next round of direct Russian-Ukrainian negotiations in Istanbul.
As we can see, they're dragging out the negotiation process. They could have handed the document over earlier and already discussed the unresolved issues on June 2nd, but instead they are delaying and will again pressure the negotiation team, demanding the handover of 4 regions. That much is already obvious. Sabiha also expressed dissatisfaction with the fact that the Russians are dragging out the process. Why wait until Monday? Sabiha called on Russia to immediately hand over its version of the ceasefire memorandum. Meanwhile, Lavrov stated that Germany is continuing to get drawn into the war.
Murs said at a press conference that from the very beginning, he meant financing the production of missiles of any range in Ukraine. So, supposedly, we're not talking about German missile deliveries. Both claims need to be verified. This is fueling tensions and supporting the war. Germany is directly getting involved. That's why this direct involvement in the war is already obvious. And Germany is sliding down the same dangerous slope it already went down a couple of times in the past century toward its own collapse. I hope that the responsible politicians in that country will still draw the right conclusions and stop this madness.
One more question regarding Trump's recent statements that Putin is playing with fire and that Russia is sending drones into Ukraine without provocation. How would you respond?
This has already been commented on many times. But one thing has become clear over the past few days: Donald Trump and those who actually make decisions regarding the Ukraine conflict are not getting the full picture. They're being fed information that's been filtered through a sieve prepared by those who want to push America into more aggressive action against Russia in support of the Ukrainian regime. We will try to correct this information gap.
Trump recently said that within a week we'll see whether Putin actually wants to end this war. And now he's saying again, only now it's within 2 weeks, we'll see whether Putin wants to end the war.
Do you believe the Russians are being disrespectful when they say that your criticisms of Putin are simply an emotional response? And do you still believe that Putin actually wants to end the war?
I can't tell you that, but I'll let you know in about 2 weeks. Within 2 weeks, we're going to find out very soon. We're going to find out whether or not he's tapping us along or not. And if he is, we'll respond a little bit differently, but it'll take about a week and a half, 2 weeks. We have Mr. Witkoff is here, who's doing a phenomenal job, is dealing with them very strongly right now. They seem to want to do something, but until the document is signed, I can't tell you. Nobody can. I can say this. That I'm very disappointed at what happened couple of nights now where people were killed in the middle of what you would call a negotiation. I'm very disappointed by that. Very, very disappointed. Yeah, please.
But what we're seeing today, both on the front line and along the border, makes it clear that the Russians are not planning to stop anytime soon. The front continues to shift, and the intensity of offensive actions remains high. Let's start right away with the situation at the border. In the Sumy region, they continue to seize settlements, and this is without having brought in their main resources yet. For now, they're trying to take over villages that are essentially in the gray zone, right along the border. Just yesterday, they announced that the village of Kostyantynivka had come under their control. In the area of the villages of Vodolakhy and Yablonivka, there hasn't been any new advances yet, but the activity remains intense, about 30 assaults over the past 24 hours, so we'll be watching closely to see how things develop. Now let's move to the Kharkiv direction. Shelling continues in this area, but the Russians are not launching new assaults. In Vovchansk, however, the fighting goes on, and the Russians are claiming they've made gains, but the Ukrainian side hasn't confirmed this so far. Battles there are ongoing. In any case, even if the Russian reported successes are eventually confirmed, they're minimal, especially considering they've been trying to break through here for over 6 months. Next, let's go straight to the situation near Kostyantynivka. Around Chasiv Yar, the Russians are continuing the attacks on the central part of the city. They're also trying to push through toward Bila Hora and Delivka. Near Druzhba, they've managed to advance slightly, but as of today, there have been no new Russian gains reported in that area. However, the situation near the Klebenbyk reservoir is deteriorating rapidly. Yesterday, it was confirmed that Russian forces made significant advances and captured several settlements at once. They are now attempting to break through to Yablonivka in an effort to close the pocket. Most likely, a withdrawal from this area will be necessary in the near future, but for now, the assaults are ongoing. In the Pokrovsk direction, Russian activity also remains high, and this area is still seeing the most assaults, over 60 attacks in the past 24 hours. So, despite the major Russian gains in the Kostyantynivka direction, the pressure on Pokrovsk is even greater. However, the Ukrainian forces are still managing to hold the line here as the Russians continue to assault Malinivka and Myrolyubivka. Ukrainian soldiers report that today their objective is to break through to Novoekonomichne and then continue their advance toward Mirnograd and Pokrovsk. At the same time, assaults on Lysivka and Dachinske continue, where the Russian forces are pushing near Zvirove and Kotline and launching attacks on Udachne and Novosergiyevka. Still, there were no changes in control over the past 24 hours, though the situation remains extremely tense. In the Novopavlivka direction, the Russians are attacking Novomykolaivka, Muravka, Troitske, Gorikhove, and Oleksiivka. The intensity of activity here also remains very high, but there have been no confirmed changes on the ground in the last 24 hours. In the direction of Velika Novosilka, Russian forces are advancing toward the villages of Shevchenko, Zelene Pole, and Novopil. So far, the Ukrainian side hasn't confirmed the loss of Zelene Pole. However, unfortunately, the Russians have once again released a video showing them storming the village and raising their flag. So most likely the village is under their control. It's possible the Ukrainian forces will launch counterattacks and use FPV drones to target the Russians and prevent them from consolidating their positions. But as we've seen before, this often doesn't change the outcome. the Russians outnumber us and continue pushing forward. In the Zaporizhzhia direction, Russian troops are advancing toward Novodanilivka, launching assaults on Novoandriivka, Sherbaki, Mali Sherbaki, and Stepove. They're also carrying out heavy shelling and actively using FPV drones. The activity in this area remains intense. Civilians are still being evacuated from frontline villages, but so far no territorial gains have been recorded along this front. In the Kherson direction, Russian forces continue shelling the right bank of the Dnipro River, but no new attacks on the islands have been recorded. The front line remains unchanged for now. Now moving on to the Siversk direction. Here, Russian troops continue the assaults in the Serebryanka forest and are attacking the village of Grigorivka. Activity remains low, and so far all Russian attacks are being successfully repelled. In the Lyman direction, Russian forces are storming Zelena Dolina, Lipove, Ritko Dub, and pushing toward Karpivka. They're also attacking Novy Mir and Druzhelyubivka. Near Karpivka, the situation is deteriorating. Russian troops are repeatedly advancing closer to the water barrier, raising concerns that they may manage to establish a foothold. However, no territorial changes have been recorded in the past 24 hours. In the Borova direction, Russian troops are assaulting Boguslavka and Kopanki and are attempting breakthroughs in the area of Raigorodka. So far, the situation remains under control and no new Russian advances have been reported. In the Kupiansk direction, Russian forces didn't carry out any new assaults and the situation has remained unchanged over the past 24 hours. In the Dvorichna direction, Russian troops are assaulting Doroshivka and Dovhenke, advancing near Fikholivka and attacking Stroivka. Activity here is significantly increasing, suggesting that the Russians are attempting to retake territory previously lost during the first Ukrainian counteroffensive. However, no changes have been recorded in the past day, and the Ukrainian forces continue to repel all attacks. Today, new evidence continues to emerge that Russia intends to continue its war. That is its goal. It's not just Ukraine, but global dominance. Russia has carried out a massive modernization of its armed forces. Moscow is preparing for a world war, reports Der Spiegel. Across the country, new facilities have been constructed, rebuilt bases, hundreds of barracks, watchtowers, command centers, and warehouses, as well as kilometers of underground tunnels. Among the upgrades is a modernized silo housing, the Avangard system, a maneuverable hypersonic warhead launched by an intercontinental ballistic missile. Moscow's claims of large-scale rearmament are backed by concrete steps. However, much of the modernization merely compensates for outdated Soviet-era systems and doesn't shift the strategic balance between nuclear superpowers. And that's all from me. So please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to stay updated on all this latest news. Thank you for watching and see you next time. Bye bye.